Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I have a fun video for you. We're going to talk about 6 ways to dress up die cuts, and I'm going to share 2 holiday cards that I created with the brand new release from Altenew that's available now in their shop. So I'm going to focus on a few of these die sets here. I will be using the Festive Ornaments set in today's card projects. You can see that this is a layering die set here where the pieces come together to create some really beautiful ornate ornaments. I'll also be using the berry branch. This is a layering die set that creates a beautiful branch, and I'm going to talk to you about some ways that you can kind of increase the drama on these die cuts as you use them. Next up is the Winter Village die set. Now, I'm not actually using this in today's video, but I will be using it in a video later this month over on the Altenew YouTube channel, so be sure to check there for more inspiration. Finally, I have the Timeless Sentiments 3 die set. Now, this is a fabulous sentiment die set that has some kind of holiday-ish sentiments in it, but also some sentiments that can be used throughout the year. Now, in case you missed it, over the last couple of months, Altenew has also been releasing their Crafty Necessities cardstocks. These are a great smooth cardstock in a variety of colors. I'm going to be using these today. These are actually the August colors, and then there are some new colors available for September as well. I'm going to start today's card projects by die cutting the layers for the berry branch layering die set. And this base layer is actually the layer that includes the leaves, so I am die cutting it from the Altenew Olive cardstock. Now, I'm using my Anna Griffin Impress die cutting machine, and sometimes I cut into the cutting plate and sometimes I cut into the magnet. Because this is a more ornate die, I prefer to cut into the cutting plate when die cutting a die like this. If it's a little less kind of what I consider ornate or detailed, I will usually die cut into the magnet. And just keep in mind that that isn't necessarily what is recommended by the manufacturer. It's recommended that you cut into the plate. I've been cutting into the magnet as well as the plate for quite some time now, and I've never really had any issues, but take that for what it's worth as a little word of warning that this isn't necessarily the recommended way, or the magnet isn't necessarily the recommended way. Now, I die cut that branch layer, which is layer number 3, from the paper bag cardstock, and I die cut the berry layer from the crimson cardstock. So you can see I have all 3 of these layers that we're going to stack up together to create our berry branch. Now, the very bottom layer will be that leaf layer, and then we'll add on the berry layer, and then finally that brown branch layer to kind of bring in all of the different colors that we need. But before we do that, we are going to add a little bit of drama to these die cuts. We're going to dress them up with some ink blending, and this is the first way to kind of dress up your die cuts. Now, for this, I am using some similar tones of ink, but in darker colors to the cardstock that I use. So I'm starting out with an angled detailed blending brush from Altenew, and I'm using the new Rhodolite Fresh Dye ink, and I'm blending on some color onto this paper bag die cut that we've created. Now, I didn't cover the entire thing, but you can see that it definitely adds a little bit of drama and kind of changes the tone of the cardstock in several places. And we're going to continue this with this leafy layer as well, and I'm blending on some green opal ink. Finally, I'm going to the berry layer and I'm blending on some crimson ink. And this is the same color ink as the cardstock that I'm using. So I'm not going to get as much contrast as I would with using a darker color of ink. Now, I did want to mention that I was using my 9x12 Ultra Sticky Matte from Altenew to hold all of my die cuts in place. You can see it works really beautifully for these intricate layers as I was doing my ink blending. And now that all of my ink blending is done, I am going to turn these layers over. I'm going to add some liquid glue on the back, and I'm going to stack these up to create my finished piece. Now, the thing I want to point out to you about this berry branch layering die set is that you can actually use some of these layers on their own, or you can use just 2 of the layers instead of all 3 to give this a completely different look. So if you just use the branch and the leaf layer, you can use that all year round. If you use just the branch and the berry layer, it changes the way it looks. And when you change the colors of the berries, it can definitely make it feel less holiday. So it's something that you can use throughout the year. Now, once I adhered the branch or that brown top layer onto the berry layer, I'm going to flip that entire thing over, add some liquid glue, and then add it onto the leaf layer, which is actually the base layer of all three of these. I'm going to just make sure that I'm kind of lining everything up, taking my time to push things together. That's the beauty of the liquid glue in this situation. I can kind of adjust things, and there you can see my beautiful berry branch. Now we're going to dress this up a little bit more as we go along, but for now I have this assembled. And when I was looking at it, I really felt like I didn't have enough kind of darkness or contrast on the berries. So I grabbed a darker color ink. This time I'm using the Velvet Fresh Dye ink and one of those detail blending brushes to add a little bit more contrast to the berries. Now, another great thing to have on hand when you're working with delicate die cuts like this is some adhesive sheets. And the Altenew adhesive sheets are fabulous. I like to trim down pieces of cardstock and then trim down my adhesive sheet and place the adhesive sheet on the back of my cardstock. This is going to add adhesive all over the back of my cardstock. And when I do my die cutting, it's going to make my die cuts like little stickers. So I won't have to add adhesive or liquid glue to the back of them. Now, you do kind of give up that wiggle room that I was talking about with the liquid glue earlier, but you're going to see how easy it is then to take these and put them all together. So once again, I am die cutting all of the layers from the leafy branch die set. This time I have the adhesive on the back and I skipped the ink blending for this part because you've already seen me do that. But now I have these stickers and I can just remove the adhesive backer from the back of each of these die cuts. I'm moving carefully here. And then I have a sticker that is ready to stick right on top of the other layer and kind of build this up. Now for these berries, I actually used the Rouge cardstock from Altenew. It's a really beautiful kind of corally pink color. And I chose a darker color ink in the same family to kind of add a little shading to these die cuts as well. And you can see that even though this is a sticker, I'm kind of taking my time to make sure that I have everything positioned properly. And it is a little bit forgiving. It will become more permanent as the adhesive kind of sets up. Now I have my branch layer. I'm going to place that on top of the two stacked up die cuts that are beneath, and that completes my second little berry branch that I'm creating for my card projects today. Now by using the pink berries on this berry branch, it changes the feel of this. So you can imagine that the feel changes even more if you were to use a different color like a blue or a purple for the berries. It can really make this die cut go year round. Next up, I am going to grab the Festive Ornaments die set and I'm going to grab that base layer, the little ornament topper, and then I'm kind of deciding on which detail layer I like, and I decided on the swirly. And this brings us to our second way to dress up die cuts, and that's to die cut them from some specialty cardstock. Now, a metallic or a glitter cardstock is always a win for me, and here I am using the Altenew Diamond cardstock. Now, when I'm die cutting through a glitter cardstock like this, I do like to add a metal shim to my die cutting sandwich, just because I find that I get a cleaner cut if I add just a little bit more pressure to the die cutting sandwich when I am die cutting a glitter cardstock. So now I have my base layer of the ornament, which is the circle there. I have my fancy layer, which I've die cut from the Altenew Diamond Glitter cardstock. I'm just removing that from the die there. And I've also die cut the ornament topper from that Diamond Glitter cardstock. Now, once again, we're going to add a little bit of shading to this die cut to just kind of dress it up a little bit. I'm using the Emerald ink with a mini ink blending brush from Altenew, and this is on the Lagoon cardstock. So you can see I'm using a similar tone of ink, but it's a little bit darker than my base color, and that really kind of amps up the drama on the ink blending on the edges of these cardstocks. Now, once I'm done with my ink blending, I'm going to flip the glitter layer over, add some liquid glue to the back, and I'll position it onto the ornament base layer here. Now, keep in mind, you can cut your base from any color, so you can create ornaments of any kind. And in fact, you could cut the base from just a plain white cardstock and add ink blending over the entire thing to really make a beautiful kind of ombre ornament. Now that I have the kind of focal elements of my cards layered up and ready to go, I'm going to work on die cutting my sentiments. And I'm using the Timeless Sentiments 3 die set, brand new this month. I love this because it's great for the holidays as well as other times during the year. I think the Shine Bright sentiment is one of those that you can use throughout the year. Today I'm using the All is Calm and Peace and Joy sentiments. And I'm die cutting the shadow layer from vellum, and I'm die cutting the sentiment itself from some diamond glitter cardstock. You can see I laid my dies onto the cardstock, and then I flipped my sandwich over to make sure that I didn't see any of the die cutting edge beyond the edge of that glitter cardstock, just making sure that everything was still positioned on my sandwich properly and I wasn't going to get any partial die cuts. So once I run that through my die cut machine, I can carefully remove my sentiments from the outer part of that cardstock. You can see I'm using just a little pokey tool to remove the die cut from this die. Sometimes when you use a metal shim like I do when I die cut this glitter cardstock, the die cut really wants to stick inside of the die, and so using something to kind of help poke it out you might find that helpful. Now here I have a panel of Arctic Mountain Crafty Necessities cardstock from Altenew. You can see I've trimmed that down into a panel and I've blended on a little bit of the Cloud White pigment ink along the top. I'm going to be making kind of a snowy background for my first berry branch. And in order to add some kind of ink splatter to this, I've grabbed my Altenew metallic watercolors, and there's this really beautiful kind of shimmery white metallic watercolor in the upper corner here. I'm just wetting that with a little bit of water, which I keep in a dropper so that I can keep some water in my craft room without making a mess. And if I just need to do quick little ink splatters like this, I have the water without keeping an open container. So it's just got like a little eyedropper in it. You can see I added just a little bit more water to this watercolor that I transferred over to my clear block to get it moving a little bit better. And then I'm going to take this and just flick it on to my background to create this shimmery, snowy background. And this is going to be a really beautiful, dramatic background for my first berry branch. Once I'm done kind of flicking on all of that metallic watercolor, I'm going to just pick it up and set it aside to dry. And then I'm going to work on my sentiment. Now this is the third way to dress up die cuts, and that's to stack them up. So you can see I have die cut 2 additional layers of the All is Calm sentiment from some plain white cardstock, and I'm adding liquid glue to the front of both of these layers. Then I'm going to stack up these die cuts with my glitter layer on the top to create a thicker, more dimensional die cut for the front of my card. Now, if you are not a believer in this, that's okay. You can always use foam tape, but there's just something about a stacked up die cut that adds a little bit of drama. It makes it carry a little more weight on the card front, and it just makes it feel a little more special. So that's the third way to kind of dress up your die cut. And keep in mind, you could do that with one of the layers of your layering die as well if you wanted to do that. Once I have the sentiment stacked up, I've adhered that onto the vellum shadow layer, and I'm adding it to my card panel with some foam adhesive behind that vellum shadow layer. I like to lift my vellum off of my card front just a little bit. I think it adds to the ethereal feel of vellum. And then I have also cut another panel of the Arctic Mountain cardstock to matte this layer. It's just giving it that darker blue edge. It kind of turns up the contrast. And then I'll take this entire thing and add it to a top folding A2 size card base. Now we're not done dressing up these die cuts yet. The fourth way to dress up some die cuts is to use a white gel pen to add some highlight areas, and that's exactly what I'm doing on these berries here. And I'm going to continue to dress up these berries even beyond that. And for that, I'll be using an oldie but goodie favorite product of mine, Glossy Accents. Now there are other products on the market that do similar things, so you can just choose the brand that you are most familiar with or fond of. I have used Glossy Accents for ages in my craft room. This is going to give each of those berries a raised glossy effect. You could do something similar with some clear embossing powder. There's all different kinds of little glitter drops and things like that that you can place on top of a cardstock die cut. And this is just another way to kind of dress up those die cuts and turn up the wow factor on your cards. So this finishes off card number 1. And now we're going to move on to card number 2. Now you can see I already have my ornament assembled, as well as my peace and joy sentiment, which I assembled in the same way as the all is calm sentiment. So there's a couple layers of plain white cardstock behind the glitter layer there. It's adhered to the vellum shadow layer, and I'll set those aside while I work on my background. Now I've die cut some Volcano Lake cardstock from the Altenew Crafty Necessities cardstock line, and I have the Rainbow Burst hot foil plate. I'm going to show you how to make an impression on your cardstock with a foil plate. So keep in mind, foil plates don't always have to be used for foil. You can use them to make an impression as well. I have followed the recommended die cutting sandwich for making an impression with a die, and I've run this through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine, and now you can see I have that really beautiful swirl background on my panel of cardstock. This brings me to the 6th way to dress up a die cut, and that's to use some twine, metallic thread, or string to add some bows or little embellishments to the top of your die cut, and that's exactly what I'm doing with this ornament here. I've used the DMC Diamant Grande silver thread here to create a double layer bow to place on top of my ornament. Once I tied that, I adhered it to the top of my ornament using some liquid glue, and now I'm taking each of these elements and adding it to that card front that I created with some foam adhesive. So I'm just kind of sneaking that under the edge of this peace and joy sentiment. Also, that has some foam adhesive behind it, so there's a little room for me to kind of wiggle that under there. Now this first berry branch that I created, I didn't want it to go to waste, but I didn't really have room for it on my card front. So I have trimmed down little pieces of this red and green berry branch, and I'm sneaking it behind those die cuts that are already on the front of my card. And I love the pop of color that this brought to this card project. And by trimming it down, I was able to use it a lot more effectively on this card and make it really feel like the ornament was kind of suspended from this berry branch. So you can see I've trimmed it down, kind of positioned it where I want, and then I'm removing those pieces one by one, adding some liquid glue to the back of them, and then adhering them in place permanently. Now to finish off this card, I am going to mount this panel of Volcano Lake cardstock onto a little bit larger panel of crimson cardstock. This really brings in that holiday feel because you have that aqua and red together. That pop of red really just kind of sends it over the edge to holiday and Christmas time. And I will add that entire panel onto a top folding A2 size card base using, you guessed it, some foam adhesive to bring a little more drama and dimension to this card. Now we already went over this way of dressing up your die cuts in card number 1, but I am going to finish off these berries with a little more of the glossy accents to give them some raised dimension and shine. And I also added a few drops of glossy accents to the glitter portion of my ornament as well. And that finishes off card number 2, showcasing 6 ways to dress up your die cuts, add a little drama, a little color, a little dimension to them. All of these tips are really easy to implement, and you may already have some of these products in your craft room that you can try out the next time you create a die cut card. Now, before you head out, I want you to do a couple of things. Number 1, I want you to go to the comments below and let me know which of these 2 cards is your favorite today. And while you're hanging out around the comments and description of this video, keep in mind that if you hit the show more function of the YouTube description, you will find links to all the featured products used in these projects today. You can also find a link over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Over there, I'll have more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Also, I haven't mentioned this yet, but these projects are a part of an Instagram hop celebrating Altenew's brand new release. So if you head on over to my Instagram profile, you will find a link in the YouTube description below. You can join in on all of the fun and you can enter for a chance to win some prizes as well as find a lot more inspiration featuring this brand new release. I hope you enjoyed these projects. I hope you enjoyed these videos. And I hope you learned something new with these 6 ways to dress up die cuts. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you're here. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.